Hello beautiful people, welcome to Remy's Fashion. My name is Remy. On this channel, I upload pattern drafting and sewing tutorials every week. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to draft an off-shoulder bustier pattern. So let's get started. These are the measurements you will need to draft this pattern. The first thing I'm going to do is to fold my pattern paper into two. I will use my biggest circumference measurement for my upper bust. I will divide it by 4 and add 4 inches allowance. The biggest measurement of my upper body is my bust. My bust is 44 inches. By the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give me 11 inches. And by the time I add 4 inches allowance, I will have 15 inches. I measure 15 inches and I fold it. This is 15 inches. So find out whatever your bust circumference is, you divide that by 4 and then you add 4 inches allowance and then you fold your paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is to rule out my starting point. So this is my starting point and I'm going to name this starting point my shoulder line. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure and draw out my vertical measurements and then I will label them. From my shoulder to my bust is 12 inches. I will measure and I will mark. Shoulder to my under bust is 16 inches. I'll measure and I will mark. And shoulder to my waist is 18 inches. This is my half length. I'll measure and I'll mark. And then I'll draw a horizontal line to connect the points. I've measured and I've drawn a horizontal line across. And then I'm just going to label. So this is my bust line, this is my under bust line, and this is my waistline. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to plot in my shoulder measurements. My shoulder is 18 inches, and by the time I divide that by 2, it's going to give me 9 inches. So I'm going to measure 9 inches and I will mark. Since we're drafting an off-shoulder top, we do not need a neckline. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I will add one to make it easier to understand. I'm going to be using the standard neck width and neck depth. We will use the standard 3 inches for the neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth, and then we'll create a curve. So 3 inches by 3 inches. And I'll create the neck curve. I will now slant my shoulder by 1 inch because our shoulders are not straight. 1 inch will put me here, and then I'm going to connect to the neck width like this. I will now draw out my armhole length. To get that, the formula is bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. My bust is 44 inches, and by the time I divide that by 6, it's going to give me 7.3333. And by the time I add 1.5 inches, it's going to give me 8.8333. I will approximate it to 9 inches. So I will measure 9 inches from the 1 inch that we went down, and I will rule a line. 9 inches puts me here, and I'll rule the line like this. And then I will draw a horizontal line outwards for the armhole curve. So this is our chest line or upper bust line. We will now create the curve, that's the armhole curve, by finding the midpoint of our armhole line. So this line is 9 inches, so half of it is 4.5. I'm just going to put a dot there. So the midpoint of my 9 inches is 4.5 inches. So measure yours, and then whatever yours is, you mark. Then I will measure half an inch inwards from that midpoint. This is what I'm going to use to create my armhole curve. Half an inch here. Inwards. So the next thing we're going to do now is to place our horizontal measurements. Plot in your calculated bust circumference measurement on your upper bust to chest line. This is where I'm going to be plotting it in. So my bust circumference measurement is 44 inches, and by the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give me 11 inches. So I'm going to measure 11 inches on this line. 11 inches puts me here, and I will mark. The next one is my under bust circumference measurement. My under bust circumference measurement is 37 inches. By the time I divide that by 4, it's going to give me 9.25 inches. So under bust, this is where I'm going to put it. So I'll measure 9.25 inches and I will mark. I'll measure the same 9.25 inches on my waistline and then I will mark. And then I'm going to connect from my upper bust line to my waistline using my ruler like this. We'll now create our armhole curve. So from the shoulder to the midpoint, I'm going to draw a straight line like this. And then I will draw a curve from the 1/2 inch to my chest line like this. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut off the shoulder. Remember, it's an off-shoulder pattern that we're drafting. I'll be using 4 inches. You can increase yours if you want. So, but I'm going to be using 4 inches for my off-the-shoulder cuts. I'll mark 4 inches on the center front. So 4 inches, put me here, and I will mark. This is a personal preference. So by the time I use 1/2 inch to sew, my neck depth will now become 4.5 inches. So 4 inches is what I'm going to be using for my neckline depth. To place my nipple to nipple measurements, mine is 8 inches. By the time I divide that by 2, it's going to give me 4 inches. And I'm going to add 1/2 inch allowance to it. And I'm going to get 4.5 inches. So I'm going to measure 4.5 inches on bust line, my under the bust line and my waistline. I'm going to extend this 4.5 inches up to my neckline. And then I'm going to connect with a straight line. So from under the bust line, I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch. If you're going to pad it, this is to create support. So I'm going to measure 1/2 inch upwards like this, and I will mark. And I will draw a horizontal line to connect the points. Like this. You should watch my tutorial on how to draft a princess dart. I explain this process as well. I'll put a link in the description box below and on the cards above. The next thing we're going to do is to measure 2.5 inches from our bust span line towards the sides. This is our bust span line. I'm going to measure 2.5 inches on this new line that we went up. This depends on your bust size. It differs from bust size to bust size. I'm using 2.5 inches because my bust size is 44 inches. So you should use 2 inches or 1.5 inches if your bust size is not up to 44 inches. So I'll measure 2.5 at the under bust. We went up by 1/2 inch, and I'll measure 2.5 on the waistline as well. So I'm going to connect the two of them together like this. And then I use my curve to connect to my bust point like this. So from my neckline here, I'm going to measure 1 inch on my right and 1/2 inch on the left. I'm also going to measure 1/2 inch on the waistline like this. And then I will connect the 1/2 inch on the left to my bust point like this. And then the 1 inch, I'm going to connect it to the bust point as well, from the right to the bust point like this. And then I'll connect this 1/2 inch on the waistline to the bust point as well. This is we creating our dart. Okay, the next thing I'll need to do now is to add back the 1.5 inches that we took out from here, and this is 2.5 plus 1/2 inch, 3 inches we took out from here. So I'll now measure 1.5 inches. That will put me here. And then I'm going to measure what is on the chest line. So this dart on the chest line, it's about 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to add back the 1/2 inch here so that we will not be short. I will extend this line and connect it to the new armhole like this. And then I'll connect this line to this line with my curve. And then I'll add back the 3 inches that we took out. This is 2.5 plus this. That is 3 inches. I'll add back the 3 inches there. And then I'll connect to this point. So now, the next thing I'm going to do now is to add my seam allowances around my pattern. I'm going to be adding 2 inches on the side and 1/2 inch on the waistline. I've already taken into consideration my 1/2 inch at the top. That is why I came down by 4 inches. So by the time I take out that 1/2 inch, my depth will be 4.5 inches. I'm going to add my seam allowances now. 2 inches on the side. 1/2 inch on the waistline. So we're done with our front off shoulder pattern. So the next one we're going to be doing is the back. With the back pattern, I will also still measure 15 inches to put on fold, which I have done. So the first thing I will do is to draw out a starting point, which I always do. And this starting point, this is my shoulder line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to rule out 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So I'm just going to measure 1 inch. That's the allowance I want to leave for my zipper. Then I will measure out my vertical measurement. So that is from my shoulder to my bust and from my shoulder to my waist. And then I will rule a horizontal line to connect the points. Shoulder to my bust is 12 inches. And shoulder to my waist is 18 inches. I will mark. And then I will rule a horizontal line to connect the points. So this is my bust line, and then this is my waist line. I will now plot in my shoulder measurement, which is 9 inches. My shoulder measurement is 18 inches. I divide that by 2 is going to give me 9 inches. 9 inches puts me here. And then I'm going to draw out the neckline. Just like I said earlier, we do not need a neckline because it's an off-shoulder pattern. But with the neckline, by the time I draw it, to make you understand better, especially for the beginners, they will understand exactly what we're doing. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slope my shoulder by 1 inch, and then I'll connect it to my neck width. And then I will draw out my armhole length, which we have already calculated, and mine is 9 inches. And then I will draw a horizontal line outwards. I will take the midpoint of the armhole length, and mine is 4.5 inches. I will mark. For the back, I'm not going to go in by half an inch. It's from this point that I'm going to connect to my bust circumference measurement. So the next thing we're going to do is to place our horizontal measurements. For my bust circumference is 44 inches. I divide that by 4 is going to give me 11 inches. So I'm going to measure 11 inches on my chest line. 11 inches puts me here, and I will mark. And then my waist circumference, I'm going to be using 9.25 inches. That is what I use for the front. 9.25 inches puts me here. And then I will connect the points from here to here, like this. After doing that, we will now create our armhole curve. This is the midpoint. From the midpoint, I'll create a curve to meet my circumference measurement, like this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut off the shoulder because we're drafting for an off-shoulder top. So I'll be using 4 inches. By the time I use half an inch to sew, my neckline will be 4.5 inches. You can increase yours. This is a personal preference. So decide what you want to use and then use that. I'm going to be using 4 inches. So we'll now plot in my nipple to nipple measurements. My nipple to nipple measurements is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to plot it on my chest line, my bust line, and my waistline. So 4.5 inches puts me here on my chest line. And then I'm going to measure half an inch down on the chest line. That's where I'm going to be drawing my line from. So 4.5 inches on my bust line and 4.5 inches on my waistline. And then I will connect the straight line. So I'm going to be drawing out the dart legs, and I'm going to be taking 1 inch dart. So that will be ½ inch on each side of the line. And I will connect to the top, like this. Then I'm going to add back this 1 inch I took from the waistline to my waist, like this. And then I'll connect it upwards. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add allowances around my pattern. I'm going to be adding ½ an inch on the waistline, and I'm going to be adding 2 inches on the side, just like I did for the front. And then I'll connect them together. To eliminate the zipper bulge at the back, I'm going to go in by ½ an inch on this side. I'll go in by ½ an inch. And I will connect from that point to my top. And I'm going to do the same thing on the second side. This is going to be my new zipper line. The ½ an inch we took out from here, we'll add it back. So these are our patterns, the front and the back. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to cut out both patterns, and then I'll show you what they look like. Just like I said earlier, you can decide whatever neckline you want to make. For the front, you can make a sweetheart neckline. For the back, you can make a curved neckline, or you can leave it straight as it is, or you can make whatever neckline you prefer. But for me, I'm just going to be leaving it like this. And then depending on whatever style I want to create, then I will now draw out my neckline. So I'm going to cut out now. Cutting out, I have the front and the back. This is the front of our off shoulder bustier pattern, and this is the back. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. See you in my next tutorial. Take care and God bless.